Beach FM, locals talking to locals.
Beach FM, wonderful to welcome back the Kapiti representative on the Greater Wellington Regional Council, Penny Gaylor. Good morning to you.
Good morning, thank you very much. How are you?
I'm fine. I do hope you are as well.
I am. Lots on the go.
Lots on the go. Lots of workshops, it seems.
Yes, it's what I call workshop season. That's in the kind of the build-up week to when we then kick off into another rotation of our committee meetings. So this week it's all about the workshops and diving into kind of the briefing side of things. So plenty of things I can't actually kind of give you heads up about, but, you know, background stuff as we build up to certain kind of thinkings and going in different directions and stuff like that. Certainly on Tuesday of this week we had a fiesta of environmental kind of topics before us. And I'll tell you, one of the things I could share with you is that we had a briefing for about an hour on environmental enhancement work that we do, and that background work on our key natural ecosystems. And of course, you know, we have quite a few here in the Kapiti coast. And then we also had a presentation around fish passage, and we had the most amazing little video. I have never seen anything like this, of the tiny little tuna then trying to get up, you know, through like culverts and all this sort of thing. You go, oh, you poor little sods. But it showed us how they do it, and they're very clever.
They go uphill.
They do,
yes.
and they take on that water like those fancy pools where you see them kind of, you know, tiny little pools, but they're tuning through the water. And these fish there were different ones that were kind of got a flat tummy, and they actually were climbing. As long as the wall is wet, they can kind of stick onto it, and they kind of squirm upwards. Was that a good explanation?
That's wonderful. Speaking of water, have you been involved in this Five Waters proposal?
Yes, the Three Waters reform program.
Oh, the Three Waters, yes. Yes,
so that the government had made a very high-level announcement around that we were potentially heading to reforms. And Three Waters is, of course, your fresh drinking water, your drinkable water, your wastewater, and then, of course, your stormwater. And there was a meeting of the Regions Councils last Thursday at the Pariwaka in Wellington, and a rough head count, I counted about 60, specifically kind of mayors, chairs, and us councillors, and that's from around the region. And I have to say, it's been a really, really long time since I've seen that good a turnout to a particular topic in the kind of decade and a bit now that I've been involved in local government. So people got that we needed to go and hear about this firsthand and get our head around what the government's proposing, but also very importantly what the timeline is for kind of stepping into more of the discussion. And so it's kind of a critical time coming up till the end of August, where all councils around the country are being asked to kind of opt in to sign an MOU, a memorandum of understanding, to say that you kind of got your foot in the door, you're interested. Like you might say if you were buying a house, you know, you kind of do that first kind of like, I'm interested, and but not absolutely committed to it. And then there's some, you know, recently in amongst the post-COVID kind of dosh that was flying around, all those sorts of announcements, and amongst that was a sort of about a $740 million package that was talked about. And at the time we were going, but what? What do we do with that? So this is that money would be, we would all, if you got an MOU with the government, then that would kind of get you a seat at the auction. And then you could put in your bid for what your particular one of the three water project might be within your council domain, and then they'll consider which ones are the kind of the priorities, best wins based on population, greatest need, or whatever the criteria might be. So certainly a lot happening, people. So please do keep your eyes peeled on whether, for example, the Kapiti Coast District Council, you know, signs up to an MOU. This will be stuff that comes before us at Regional Council in the next couple of weeks. We'll be having briefings or workshops about that, and then potentially signing up to it at a council meeting in August.
Penny, as you say, you've been involved in local government for quite some time, including on the KCDC, at a time when there was a lot of investment in the water infrastructure, and it seems that it's in pretty good stead and is a relatively sustainable solution which is in place already. There has been some concern that if the government do sign up if the district council sign up to the government proposal, that eventually with some kind of amalgamation or merger process, that Kapiti would lose some of its value and would lose some of its borrowing potential as well. Now you've got an overview, you've got a more regional view. What is your view on that?
Yeah, and I absolutely understand the worry, because it's absolutely a valid question, because what does it mean? And none of that decision making has happened, and the government view on how that would be dealt with, in a fair and equitable way, has not been determined. So that would actually be the detailed planning that goes on through next year. So what we did is it was essentially a workshop last week. So we had kind of various chaps who were in charge of the process of change or transformation for water reforms across the country, and we actually all kind of did kind of mini groups. We identified kind of particular key questions for us. That absolutely was a very, very clear question that in fact was articulated from representatives from the Kapiti Coast that were there in attendance on mass. Very much high profile on that list of questions that was to go back to be like, what we have to kind of clear off with our planning and our thinking, but also feeding back to councils and especially community, because that was the other thing too, is we were saying, well, it's good engagement. This is good engagement that you're having with us councils, love that, but also community are very interested and engaged and skin in the game on what happens with the waters and their rates and the value
particularly
of the
Kapiti Coast community. Gosh, the amount of angst there's been over the years on exactly this subject.
You know what? You can just imagine what I was muttering away with my newish colleagues around Regional Council, and they are certainly very clear about what we've achieved on the Kapiti Coast. And interesting enough, yesterday I was at home after work, and then I get a text from Chair Darren Pontus, and he quickly rang me to say, I've got to do a media interview. Now remind me, what was the percentages of savings you got from water meters? So he's getting interviews about other topics on the back of this stuff, and I have to say, a lot of councillor types from other councils, my table and some other tables, say to me, wow, what you did in that time was good on you and great, and now isn't it proving its worth and stuff? I went, yeah. So,
at some political cost, it has to be said.
Yes, and so that's why one of the kind of things that I was talking with the group that I was in the workshop breakouts with last Thursday was communicating to the community right from now, not waiting till in 6 months' time or whenever, is just ignorant, and it's deluded, and you've got to be doing it now. So I was actually, in our group was a very senior person from the Department of Internal Affairs, and I raised with him, having been through it, that communications, and we didn't do it perfectly. Obviously there was a lot of angst at the time, but that happens when you go through a decision process for change. But this is a decision process for change. So we have to kind of go, well, at least let's do the best we can to be open with information and timeliness. And, things have progressed in lots of different ways in terms of communications channels than when we were doing this process in the Kapiti Coast, 9 years ago?
Yeah.
So...
But even using the channels that were available then, I don't think it was a great process. I've got a background in communications, and I've got a feeling in the KCDC, if they do lack, I think it's in that exact area and taking the community with it. And I think that the recent review would have mentioned that. Let's finish on something that is not at all business. You went to the stadium. Yes?
Oh, yes. Can I just say in that communication, because I've got a background in that too, and,
yes, you do.
And I have to say that I think councils continue to be too timid. They want to wait to communicate to when they've made a decision, and actually the people expect you to kind of talk about what the issues might be and stuff. So I always that's the word I always use with colleagues and staff at Regional Council a lot. There's no need for us to be timid. We're all here and well versed on these topics. Let's step into the discussion. So anyway, enough said.
Enough said. I think we both know what we're talking about. I think you can have far too much management of communication personally. However, I want to finish on rugby because I believe that you went down to the stadium that you're very much invested in, as in fact we all are, and you heard Geordie reverberating around the stadium. You've got a lovely story which I'd love you to share with the listeners.
Oh, yes. So about 5 weeks ago I took one of my sons and three of his mates, 13-year-olds, to the rugby, and we had a great night, and that was really cool. And at the end of the game they were like, let's go get some autographs, and they kind of missed out because they were a bit shy, and they were like, okay, moment gone. So anyway, we went back a week ago back to the stadium to the Hurricanes versus the Blues match, and this time the boys were a bit more primed and ready. So at the end of it we were all rushing down to the edge as you're allowed to, as the crowd. And then this really cool thing happened that the stadium, who are very precious, rightly so, about their turf, made this big announcement that actually all the fans who want to can come onto the grass and come out and meet your rugby players. And we were like, oh, yes. And all of them... Goodness knows how many times I've been to that stadium for a sports game. I've never been allowed onto the field after a match, so this was exciting. Mum went down too. And one of the boys, J.I., had actually thought ahead and bought last year's rugby boots that he's now grown out of, and a gold pen. And so he was racing around and got to meet everybody from the Hurricanes and got these signatures and all that sort of thing, bar one. And the only one he couldn't get in amongst the rush and all that sort of thing was Geordie Barrett. And I was like, okay. So said to JJ, well, I'll have a wee think about this. How can we get Geordie's signature? So anyway, in my Kapiti news column that I do every week, I wrote about this last week, the wee tale, and said, is there anybody out there that could possibly help us hunt down Geordie's signature? So the Kapiti News had barely hit the letterboxes in our district, and I get an email from a lady called Sarah, and Sarah says, now my mum's just read the Kapiti News and about your tale, and how about you get the boots to me, I'll get them to my husband Dane Coles, and Dane will get Geordie to sign it. So, today is the day I'm getting them into Wellington to the lovely Sarah, who'll give them to the lovely Dane, who will get the awesome Geordie to sign the boots, and then the collection will be complete. So isn't it lovely that
that's great.
Our heroes, not just the lads, my heroes too, are kind of going the extra mile to make sure a 13-year-old lad has got a really special pair of boots.
Well, they are. I do hope he looks after them. Mum will have to nag him to make sure that they are really looked after. And not polished too much. You want to keep that gold ink on, don't you?
Yes, absolutely.
It's been lovely talking to you, Penny. Thank you so much for sparing some time here at Beach FM. You're always welcome on 106.3.
We'll see you, John.
106.3 Beach FM.